What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of Radio Wigwam's Palangi Studio of Rock, only every Tuesday night, only on Radio Wigwam. Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 UK. Today we have a special guest, Sixx A.M. singer James Michael, returning guest to the show. Only we're missing Melissa. Where is Melissa? I think she's
I
on
will
tour.
tell you where Melissa is. Melissa is actually in London right now. She's going to be here in Northern Ireland in 2 days
No
visiting.
way. So she's gonna come for a
Yeah.
visit.
So if she would have been here 2 days earlier, she could have joined us actually on this
She could.
podcast.
But we're gonna talk a lot of gear and stuff today. She might be lost.
Well, that's true. That's true. So
We're
yeah, let's dig into the gear, man.
So first of all, not I don't know if everybody knows, but you moved over to Ireland. Why is that?
My partner is originally from here. This is her hometown, actually. And
Oh,
about 5 years ago, when I pretty much made the decision to retire for the most part, um, then about a year later, she made the same decision. So then we decided, well, now that we're both free from any obligations, what do we want to do? And it just seemed like a perfect opportunity for us to get out of LA, which I love LA. I'm not one of these people that bashes LA and says, "Oh, I'm moving to Texas." I love LA, and
come to New
it'll
York.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But we just were ready for a change of pace. We wanted to be closer to her family, and it's just been absolutely amazing, dude. I'm so happy here. It feels like it was custom made for me.
You seem very calm.
Yeah, yeah, I I am. Why did I seem? Do you notice a difference? Was I more
Yes, because
intense
last time I
before?
interviewed you, it was a little bit different aura, let's say. And then
Please describe what. How
I
would you
don't I
describe the
don't know. You
difference?
just you just seem chill. At first I was like, is this, you going for new Lincoln Park look? And so you got the
Oh
hat going
God,
on. I
that's
could just
right.
tell. I could just tell you're just I've
Oh
never
yeah,
been there. I don't know what's the climate like over there right now.
it rains every day.
Oh,
It literally,
okay.
dude, it rains even on non-rainy days. It still rains at some point. It's crazy.
Okay.
So that was one of the things that we weren't sure how I was going to adjust to it because I was a California boy for almost 30
Yeah,
years.
sun and
Sunshine every day. But it's just been amazing. I don't mind the weather at all. It's so beautiful here. It's so green and beautiful. And to be honest with you, my dogs love it here compared to California, where there
yeah.
were weeks on end where we couldn't even go outside because of
Yeah.
the heat.
Yep.
So,
Or the air quality.
or the air, that's right.
Yeah.
We would get up in the morning and check our phones, and sometimes the phone alert would be do not go outside. It is dangerous to be outside.
Wow. Yeah, we've
Yeah,
had that a couple times here in New York, believe it or not. I think
yeah,
it's
it's
more places than what people know now.
yeah. I mean, it does seem like I mean, my God, I think over here in Europe, they had one of the hottest years ever, I think. It's crazy what's going on with this stuff. But no, Northern Ireland is just wonderful. I absolutely love it here.
And you're in your studio right now too. I see the plaques, the 6 a.m. We played Life
Ah,
is
I got some
Beautiful to
plaques
as
up
the
here.
intro. It's one of my
Oh,
favorite
cool.
songs. I
Right
was gonna do
on.
Rise. That's my all-time favorite song.
I dig that song too. That's a cool one. But yeah, I had to put some plaques up, man. Had to
Yeah,
put them
you
up
have to.
just to
It's
remind
what
me
you've
of
done, you know.
a life from the past.
And you got new studio panels going on there. Got the
Oh
panels
yeah.
in the
Oh yeah.
background.
You know what? Surprisingly, so when I got here, I knew that I wanted to have a studio, even though I wasn't really going to be working at the pace that I was before, I knew I still wanted to have a studio.
Yeah.
So I built this as I did with my studio in LA. I built a mix room and then built out from there. So
Okay.
it's a small facility here, but it's actually the best sounding mix room I've had. So I've been
Wow.
really lucky and really pleased
So you got
about
to actually
that.
design the room, build the walls, everything that you wanted?
To a degree, yes.
Degree, yeah.
We built some walls, yes.
Yep. That's always like, what's the size of the room? What's the shape? I'm always stuck
Uh,
with an L shape. I'm like, what do I do with that?
yeah, yeah. It
It's
is
tough.
tough. I mean, getting a home studio to sound good is a real challenge. And
It
I
is.
think you have to you have to learn an awful lot about acoustics to be able to do it properly and to
Yep.
really be able to address any issues that you're having. You need to at least know what those issues are. Are they standing waves? Is it reflections? What's going on here, and how do we remedy that? And nowadays, there's a lot of technology out there to help you with it. So if you
Yeah.
understand it, there you have the ability to correct it.
Yeah. They'll calculate everything for you and be like, well, I use the old tape measure. That's
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
use, you know? And
You know,
depending on
on
where your speakers are, where follow the chains, where's it going to hit and then where's it going to go up, where's it going to go down, you know?
exactly. Yeah.
So,
In my last studio in LA, I actually did one of those things where I took all of the measurements of the room and then sent it off to this acoustician who
oh,
then sent me back what my design was, exactly where the panel should be placed. And they were at different, degrees from the wall. Like some of them were right on the wall, and then some of them were lifted
oh,
off the wall a little
yep.
bit. And he designed the entire room, and then I just put it together the way that he designed it, and it was so good. It was
That's
really great. So
awesome.
that was a really
That
cool way
takes
to
out a
do
lot of
it.
time too. It's like, whew.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
And
some of
and
it
then
is
of
just
course,
figuring out a room, if you're not that inclined, you just have to figure it out. I've had this mixing desk in every single corner and wall of this room, and I found probably now the best spot for it and the best setup, depending on what you want to do too, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
like, so we played Life is Beautiful. What was that like recording that song? It was probably, I remember you saying it was in a big studio. What's the
That
difference between big studios
actually,
and the small ones?
well, that song was actually recorded at my home studio in LA, which was, bigger than what I have
It was,
now.
yeah, it's a good size, I remember, yeah.
Um, and I remember particularly I had just been in Nashville a few weeks before and bought this what was it, a 1951 J45 acoustic guitar. And it was just such a magical guitar, and that was the first song that I ever recorded using that guitar. So
Oh,
when
really?
DJs opening guitar riffs, it was that J45. And so that's something that always stands out to me when I hear that recording. I remember how proud I was of that acoustic guitar because I had
Hmm.
just gotten it. And then I was just so excited because it ended up, being kind of the signature sound of that track.
Yeah. Now, there's a thing where if you get new gear, you always think at first it sounds better, right? Or
Uh-huh.
if it sounds different, it always stands out to you. But then once
Of
you get
course.
used to it, you're like, how come the recordings I did in the beginning sound better than the ones I do now?
Right,
You've
right.
gotten used to it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that's
Hmm.
part of the fun of it is that you're,
Well,
you
yeah.
can end up chasing things and discovering new things in the
Did you do all
process.
the records in your home studio? Because up to a certain point, I remember I didn't know that you produced or you mixed the majority of everything too, especially the last
Yeah,
two
yeah.
records.
Yeah, I did a lot of records in that home studio. It was funny because I was in Eagle Rock, California, and it was just this little yellow house with a white picket fence. It looked completely unassuming, and it certainly did not look rock and roll.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
inside, I had just converted the entire thing into a recording studio. And
that's awesome.
yeah, man, we made like I made Motley Crue Saints of Los Angeles there.
That's
Um,
that's right. Yeah, you mentioned that in one of the so Melissa has Singer Safe Place and she does vocal lessons. Melissa Harding, she's been a guest on this show, and you guys were talking about a little bit about that, and I go, we got to talk a little bit about that on my show.
yeah,
That
yeah.
is something else, man. That you're probably like in your glory.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah, it was fun. We made a lot of I was in that house for probably, I don't know, maybe 15 years, and at least 10 of those years we were making music and making records. So a lot of
Yeah.
cool songs came out of that, and
Los
so that little
Angeles.
yellow house with a white picket fence is a little bit of rock and roll history.
Oh yeah. Well, let me tell you though, I think because I talk about a lot of bands and stuff like that, and I still tell everyone I go, you got to listen to 6 a.m. and you guys have so much more melody and so much more like all I could describe is James Hetfield, Metallica, when he stands on
Hmm.
the stage and he's like this feeling, you
Yeah.
clench like your fists or something, and you get that feeling. Your
Yeah.
music has that, but it has a lot of melody in it, which is different, I think, from a lot of bands too, because they just want to be hard and heavy. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
Yeah.
DJ with his guitar riffs, and then you're really melodic too with your vocals.
All three of us were very melodic, and so I think it was just naturally going to end up that way.
Yeah.
We we It was kind of surprising to me that we ended up being kind of considered a metal band, or at least paired in with metal bands, because we
Yeah.
certainly weren't. When you listen to our records, we were not a metal band. I
I always
think
said
it would,
hard rock. Like that's
yeah,
active
hard rock,
rock,
yeah, hard
Yeah.
rock for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that because of the association with Nikki and Motley Crue, I think that there was some crossover there where people just kind of, clumped us into maybe some genres that weren't necessarily appropriate for us. But what was
Yeah.
nice is that I think over the years and through the different albums, we kind of grew into that a little bit. We kind of accepted the fact that this was our home,
Yeah.
and we kind of were able to start exploring things that maybe we wouldn't have had people not thought of us as a
Yeah.
heavy.
There's some operatic stuff,
Oh
especially on
yeah.
the third record.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was always, as a kid, I used to live over in London. My father was an art professor, and he would teach over in London for a year and then back in the States for a year. So we kind of shuttled back and forth. So I was exposed to a lot of musical theater as a
Oh,
young
okay.
boy over in London, and that had a huge impact on me. And then uh, when we were living there, we lived in this kind of apartment building that was all artists. So above me there was like a classical pianist,
Oh, wow.
practicing all the time, and below me there was a French hornist, and it was just like there was constantly mute rehearsing going on in this building,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that made a huge impact on me as well. So I think that my first kind of experiences where I was paying attention to what other musicians were doing was either musical theater. So there's a lot of drama, and I think that really
Yeah.
was imprinted on me. And then also just the kind of the cacophony of just crazy sounds of music happening in this apartment, during the day. And sometimes it would get to be so much that I would just turn the radio up as loud as I could, just to drown out the piano, the person
Yeah.
practicing piano or something.
Yep.
So in one way or another, those were my initial kind of introductions into music and what it meant to be a musician. And I also, kind of learned, well, because I'd be hearing them practice for, 6, 8 hours a day. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, this must be what it takes. So
Yep.
so when I started really taking music seriously myself, I already knew I was going to have to put in that kind of time.
That's interesting. You learn from that too, just from other people in your apartment. He's like, he's playing for like 12 hours.
Yeah,
Jeez,
yeah. And I wish he'd frickin' stop.
Yeah,
I'm
but there's
going
you're like, oh,
crazy.
I understand now. I understand now. And it's so you released California Smile in 2022, solo song. And
Yeah.
then you just did something with Thousand Foot Crutch. We Are.
Oh yeah,
I see
yeah.
that came
Oh, I
out. I
didn't.
just went to your profile and I go, I haven't heard this one. So we're
Yeah,
gonna
that
play
was
that on the
fun.
show too.
Oh, cool. I I was not. I had known of them, but I didn't know their entire body of work. So when they came to me and asked me to be a part of that reignited, I guess it was an
Yeah,
anniversary.
yeah.
Um, I went back and I started listening to some of their stuff, and I was like, wow, why didn't I pay more attention to these guys when I was listening to a lot of this kind of music,
Yeah.
So
Oh
it
yeah.
was fun. I was very flattered and honored to be asked to be a part of that, and I had a good time doing it.
That's awesome. I know those guys too, because when I first started music, it was Day of Fire and Pillar and Red and all
Yeah,
those
yeah,
bands.
yeah,
And it's weird how some of the bands, I don't know if you even realize some of the bands that you liked, probably besides Nicki and Motley Crue, but you've gotten to meet or to play shows with, and you're like, I've listened to these dudes. I like their music.
Yeah, it
It's
was pretty
crazy.
surreal. I got to tell you, when 6 a.m. broke and we were out touring, because that had happened for me a lot later in life than most rock bands start in their 20s, their
That's what you've
teens.
said too. Yeah.
I was Jesus, I think I was 40 when 6 a.m. broke.
Really.
Or
I was
must have
like, is this
been.
guy, he's got the sunglasses, the white hair, he's got like the Billy Idol thing going on
Yeah.
a little
But
bit.
anyways, my point about that was because I was a little bit older, I had been listening to all of these bands my entire life, bands like Papa Roach and Buck Cherry. And then all of a sudden I find myself on tour with them and befriending them and then working with them and producing, them.
Yeah.
It was quite it was really exciting, and I'm glad that 6 a.m. happened for me later later in my adulthood as opposed to when I was younger, because I don't think that I would have handled the pressure or
Or
just
enjoyed
that
it as much, maybe, or,
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much. I might have in some way believed that I deserved it more or something,
yeah,
and
yeah.
by the time you hit your 40s, if something great like that happens, you really do appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because that was one of my questions. I was like, how is it, getting older? I mean, rock, there's bands, I mean, there's artists that make it when they're in their 50s, when it doesn't really matter in age. It's not like pop where it's always like, well, you got to be a teenager or early 20s or whatever. And I'm like, there's bands that are kicking out there. You don't really know how old they are. You just get like a 30 to 40s, whatever vibe.
Yeah.
And um, it's interesting. Rock is really, it doesn't really matter the age. I think in the 80s and stuff, it was all like really young glam,
Yeah.
and that kind
Yeah.
of went out. I don't know if it was grunge and, we kind of gotten older as time goes on, I think.
I think you're right. I think that I mean we've gone through phases. I think maybe in the early 2000s, you know, y- they were looking at age a lot, and even rock bands, you had to be kind of young
Yeah.
and
Well,
aggressive.
Daughtry, I think he helped kind of break that a little bit because he wasn't
That's a
just
good
a
point.
19-year-old.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah,
I've played clubs. He opened up for Day of Fire before he was on American Idol, and then afterwards
right.
they were opening up for him,
I
which was
know, I
which is
know.
cool. And
Yeah.
then
So I
yeah,
think you're right though. I think that rock is a little bit more forgiving when it comes to that. And to be honest with you, just selfishly, when I'm looking for music and I see a few rock bands, I will usually gravitate to the ones that look a little bit older,
okay,
just because I I make the assumption, whether right or wrong, I make the assumption that those guys are probably going to have cut their teeth on the same type of music that I cut my teeth on. So I'm probably going to relate to what they're doing more than this young, 20 something rock band that I may
yeah,
not even understand how they come at songwriting or how they come at performance.
yeah,
Not that I don't appreciate it and think it's amazing, but
yeah.
if you're just looking for something that you're going to feel comfortable with, I tend to lean towards older bands anyways.
That's cool. Whatever whatever works for everybody. Now, what's your approach with, like, say you're producing an artist? We can get into a little gear. We're in a studio, folks. We like to talk about gear. He's got panels on the
Absolutely.
wall. I got panels on the wall. So it's like, say an artist comes in, say I was gonna come in and was like, I got this song, and say it was only like lyrics and acoustic. As a producer, how do you
Hmm.
approach that? Do you listen to that and kind of look up maybe what the artist has done before and kind of get a style? Because I know when I produce songs, I have to kind of see an end,
Yeah,
and if
yeah.
there's no end, I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I think that depending on the band, yeah, I would go back and I would listen to their body of work, anything that they've created so far. try to get a sense of what about that is working and what about that maybe could have been improved upon, and maybe this is my opportunity to help them improve on that.
There you go.
Um, but if somebody came in with just like a lyric and an acoustic guitar, I guess it would really just depend on the song. You know how that is. Sometimes when somebody can come in with just an acoustic guitar and just blow your mind with a song that's so clearly just top notch and
Yeah. You're
and
like, we
ready
just
to
got to
be a
add the
hit.
instruments, man. That's all we got to do.
Right, exactly. And
What kind of style?
in those cases, obviously it's probably going to be much more inspired, and I think maybe because of the brilliance of the song, it will kind of tell you what it needs, or
Yeah.
what it's lacking and what it needs. What I don't like, Frank, is when artists come to you as a producer and they haven't even tried to figure it out themselves. They haven't even tried to figure out who they are as an artist,
Hmm.
and they just kind of hand it over to you and say, all right, tell me who I am, or figure out who I am. Let's create a sound together.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I always like I've done that, and it's almost never rewarding for me because it's such a crapshoot. You're just at that point you're just kind of guessing what this artist should sound like, and then you're just giving it a shot and seeing if that works. And
Yeah.
every once in a while you really nail it, and then they keep coming back to you because you kind of helped shape their sound, or you guys discovered the sound together, and it clearly proved to be a good creative dynamic between you and the artist.
Yeah. And that's old school. That's the way producers used to work, like Def Leppard, Mutt Lang, and all them.
That's
Without
right.
Mutt, you don't really have that, pyromania sound
That's
that
right.
way.
That's right. And my understanding of that was that was a real collaboration. I think
He
pushed very
saved
hard by Mutt
Hysteria.
Lang. Yeah, I think that I think probably through that process they resisted some of the things that Mutt was pushing them to do. But
Yep.
now I'm
Because
sure
he
they're
would say,
they're
that's
quite
good, do it again.
grateful.
Okay,
Right,
do it again.
exactly.
Do it again.
Yeah.
I'm a lot that way where it's like, we got it. And it's like, that sounds great. Okay, let's delete it and do it again.
Mm, mm, mm.
Because, artists out there, people listening and stuff, it's like, okay, we write a song and say you step up to the vocal mic. Yeah, you've practiced it 80 million times. We've went over the lyrics and all that, but we've never performed it,
Yeah.
right? Never performed it live. Never really even like actually performed it for yourself in a room or for a cell phone or whatever. And
Yeah.
you sing it, you do the whole thing and it's done. It's like, that's great. And it's like, it just doesn't. And you're like, let's rehearse or something like that. And then it's like,
Yeah.
this falls flat.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough, man. It's tough. I mean, there's so many different ways to approach it, and of course, every single artist is going to require a different approach.
Oh, yeah.
I think that, we run into trouble when we think that we have the formula, and then we just run artists through the formula.
Yeah.
It's like you have a bunch of filters set up, and you just force the artist through those filters, and they come out the other side sounding like and there are some producers out there, I won't name any names, because and even though they're doing some amazing stuff, where the artist ends up sounding like the producer, and you
That's
could have
true.
three or four or five or six different bands that all went to that producer because they liked what that producer did with one particular band.
Yep.
And the next thing you know, all of the colors and textures and dynamics are all almost identical to that original band that they wanted to
I've heard
sound
that
like.
before.
And I always find that, I
Yeah.
mean, th- listen, and it's not to
Well,
say
that's
that
the
those
radio
albums do.
nowadays.
That's right. That's exactly right. So it
Yeah.
makes sense. I'm not knocking that process. I just personally prefer not to be
Yeah.
that kind of a producer. I don't want records that I produce to sound like I produced them. I don't mind there
You
being
want them to
some
sound like the band,
characteristics.
something more unique,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I always tend to like big bombastic productions where maybe there's one or two things too many going on in the song, and you
Mhm.
just kind of find a way to make it all work together. It was kind of that the Trevor Horn, approach. Was Trevor Horn was is one of my favorite producers because he always just made these records that were so much bigger than my imagination even was. And
Yeah.
so
There's
it just
stuff going on where it's like, what is that? Where's it coming from? It sounds bigger than life, sort of.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I always tried to have that kind of freedom and sense of adventure when I was recording bands, especially with Sixx. I think, you had mentioned earlier that we had operatic stuff going on, and I was
Layers
just
and
layers and layers and layers. I mean, arguably way too many layers in some
how many
cases.
rhythm guitar layers are in one rhythm part? Do you do left and right, or do you
Yeah,
do
I would do left and right, and then I would I didn't do a lot of stacking of guitars. I would pay a lot of attention to getting, a tone that I thought was gonna be broad enough. And
okay?
DJ was always, DJ and I had so much fun doing that because when you have a guitar player like him, it's just fun to spend hours in the studio searching for that tone and
Yeah,
hunting for things that work. But I like it's not like we would layer it's not like we would lay a rhythm track down and then double that rhythm track and then quadruple that rhythm track. We wouldn't do that. I'd
like a
have a left and
Nickelback
a
record.
maybe, yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
I would have a left and a right, but then where we would go too far always, and that was part of the fun of it, was that we would layer things on top of it. So it wasn't the same part being layered over and over. It was a new part, and then on top of that, a new part. Well, what if we do
Oh,
another? Now, what if we have like octaves? Now, what if we have like a theme guitar doing this and a color guitar doing that? And
I
before you
gotcha.
know it, I've got, hundreds of tracks. And I'm going, why did we do this? We should have stopped 3 days ago tracking guitars. But we always had fun doing it. And because I was mixing the records, it was always fun to try to figure that out, to kind of make sense of the
It probably took
madness.
longer, right? Because they have so much more to work with.
100%. It took a
Yeah.
lot longer. And actually, what I've been doing recently, Frank, just for my own fun, because I have just archives of albums that I've made and mixed and produced and stuff. So just sitting over here in my studio here in Northern Ireland, I'll just go, okay, what song am I going to pull up today? And I'll just go back and pull up an old Motley Crue song or pull up a Papa Roach song or pull up a 6 a.m. song, all of the masters, and just completely zero it out and do a whole new mix on it. Now, these are mixes that nobody's ever going to hear except for me. I'm
Yeah.
just doing it for my own enjoyment.
Yeah.
That's what
Not even like a
a
YouTube
geek I am
upload.
when it comes to music. I literally will just come in and do a whole new mix on a song and just be at the end of it go, God, that sounds really cool. I'm glad I did that, and then
You
just put it
discover
away and
new things. Maybe you're like, why did I do that?
yeah,
When you
exactly. Or to be honest with you, I'm still learning. Like I I have learned some things in the last 3 to 4 years since I retired that I wish I would have learned 7 or 8 years ago, because I
wow.
would have applied those things to mixing and producing all of the records that I did. So
Yeah,
I would do things differently if I went back,
that's
because I
cool.
know I've figured some things out. There's some very basic things that I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't figure out until after I had retired, some real basic stuff about
Hmm.
mixing that I've just gotten way better at now that I'm not really doing a lot of
What are
mixing in.
one of those things? Name one.
Oh, dude, I used to just struggle with kick drums, mixing kick drums. And I've had some pretty cool I've had some pretty cool drum mixes in my records.
Yeah, they're tight.
Um but um but I never got my kick drums to sound the way I wanted them to sound. And I would hear records, I'd listen to like a Chris Lord Alge record or something that one of my favorite mixers had done, and I would just spend so much time trying to figure out how they got that, and then how to apply it. And oh my God, I've done the amount of hours and days and weeks and
Hmm.
months that I have
How do you get the
spent
Bob
just
Rock, Black Album
there you go. There
kick
you go.
drum?
Yeah. So, and then just in this last couple of years, I finally figured some of that stuff out. And I'm like, and I don't even care now that it's never going to end up on a record, or it may not.
It may.
I'm so happy that I know how to do it now. And
Wow.
so
It
now
may with
when
a
I
new
listen to
song.
those, yeah, maybe so, now when I listen to those records, I'm like, yeah, I know how they did that. I got
Awesome.
that figured out.
You just want to go it. Nowadays, ever heard Nail the Mix? Like you can download Nickelback's real song. It's not like I don't think you get every single layer of the guitar that they've recorded or
Sure,
stuff like that,
sure.
but all the stems are there. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
maybe it's kind of like, oh yeah, I mean, I don't have access to, 6 a.m.'s, music library, but for them, for somebody like, getting into it, they can hear at least a professional recorded,
Yeah.
recording, and hopefully it'll make them grow and expand. Not to,
Oh, that's invaluable because
yeah.
it was very rare to get your hands on, on master tracks.
And
Back
I
when
was
I was
surprised when
cutting
they
my
started
teeth.
doing that because I was like,
Yeah, but it's a
well,
great way to learn. It's the best possible way.
yeah,
Like if I had somebody that I was kind of mentoring that was wanting to learn how to mix songs, I would definitely give them stems from just raw stems from recording sessions and say mix this. And then once they mix it, give them some suggestions and say mix it again.
yeah,
I would
yeah.
just give them the opportunity to just get their hands on these tracks and just start manipulating them and doing what we do.
That's cool. That's well, I could go on forever about gear out there. Radio Wigwam here. I forget we're on a radio show because this is so casual. I'm like, I'm just talking to James right now, folks. We're on the radio still.
Are we live? Is this recorded live?
Yeah, no, it's pre-recorded, but
Pre-recorded, right?
pre-recorded. But you can see the video version, guys, too. Afterwards, it's on all of our social medias. It's going to be on the Facebooks and the YouTubes and stuff like that. You can see our past interview too up there. And we're gonna not the video version here, but the radio version. We're gonna play that song here, the 1,000 Foot Crutch one, and then we'll be right back. What's up, everybody? We're back here on Radio Wigwam here with the guest James Michael here from 6 a.m. Let me tell you, James, it's been oh boy, almost 8.5 years since I've seen you live in 2016, which was at a festival that I opened up for you guys actually at that day.
Awesome. Which festival was that?
Rockin' Derby in New York.
Oh
It was
yeah.
with Megadeth and Shinedown that day, and Like a
Okay.
Storm, I think, played too, and Dokken.
Okay.
We were the
Okay.
first ones to play that day. I remember we were walking around. I seen you walking around a little bit, and I seen Nikki. He was going to the stage. I always tell this story. He's going to the stage. Nikki's got 5 bodyguards backstage. I was like, he's backstage, man. And it was cool because it was the one experience where we ate with like the Megadeth drummer. You could just go and I forgot what they call it, where you get all the food and stuff like that. And I go,
Yeah.
this is really cool. I go, this is one of the things that now we had to post 100 flyers locally to play that show and play a battle of bands. And
Really?
we didn't actually win. I came in second. So get this. I tell this once in a while. Battle of the Bands, usually based off of tickets. I don't know if, in your early days you've done Battle of Bands that are rigged or anything like that. Of course, they're never rigged, right? Never.
Oh my
Judges and
God.
stuff. So they're like, okay, we're going to give you 50 tickets to sell. Okay. And then there's going to be a judge. So whoever wins is going to based off of this and judge. I go, okay, we sold all 50 tickets and I won the judges side. So I go, I think
Okay.
we won. Right. So band came
Right.
in. They had one of those bands out of town. They came in on this bus and the fans came off. They had like 10 fans that came with
Oh, and
them.
you're like, we're never gonna compete against
Oh, I
this.
go, what's this? What's this? And
Right.
I go, how many tickets did you sell? He goes, 80. I go, they only gave us 50 tickets. They only physically gave us 50
Oh, so it
tickets.
was rigged, man.
Yeah, I go, how did you guys sell 80? And my guitar player took their CD. He was talking to their guitarist and he gave him the CD. He took the CD, he put it underneath his tire and ran it over.
Oh, geez. So was the winner solely based on how many tickets you sold?
I think so because I mean
Yeah.
there was a judge too, but I was like, because I came in second, so you figure
Well,
I
then
probably
what did they get to do a show too or something, or how did that work?
they got to play too. They played,
Okay.
so I was the first opener, but they played after me because
Got it.
that's how it goes. And but because we posted all those flyers and came in second, we still could play, I guess, or
Right.
something like that. So I was,
I think you said Rock and Derby.
yeah,
Was that what it was? I
it
think
was
I
like a
remember
fairground
that
kind of thing.
gig, and I think I was really sick that day, if
You,
I
I think
remember
so,
correctly.
yeah.
Like
Sounded good.
that was one of the that was a show, if I'm remembering that correctly, which I think I am. I was so sick that like on uh I don't know what song it would have been, but I had to sing the chorus an octave down
Yes,
because I
because Melissa
just
was with you too,
could.
I remember.
Yeah, and so she would probably take over, and hit some of the higher things. But yeah, that didn't happen very often. But when it did, it was so defeating, dude. Oh, it's just the worst. The
I
worst.
didn't notice, and I knew the songs. I knew them very well too, and I was like, "Pff, I didn't notice.
Yeah, and most people aren't gonna notice, but you're just so devastated after you step off stage.
When
You're
you're
just
up there,
like,
you're like,
oh,
why
that
did I
just
do
sucked.
that?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
should just did that, blew my voice out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Now you're saying that I remember with the vocal stuff that in the beginning of the first Molly Crew tour with 6 a.m. that you blew your vocals out and you didn't have a vocal coach, and it was funny because show three of that tour or something like that, I seen you guys at SPAC in New York City, and I go,
Ah,
I think your voice was not blown out on that show, but I remembered in my head it was a
yeah.
really like one of the loudest shows I think I've been to as an opening act. I think you were louder than Motley Crue when you guys played. I don't know how.
Really?
Yeah.
That must have been accidental, but
DJ was walking around. My dad shook his hand, I remember, which was kind of cool.
okay.
He just walked around the whole crowd.
I remember the 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 day that I blew my voice out on that tour was you'll appreciate this. We were playing Jones Beach.
Yeah, I know what that is.
And I happened to get DJ's DJ and I got our in-ear packs mixed up.
Oh, you
So
grabbed the
I
wrong
had
one.
DJ's mix in my ears the whole time, and DJ's mix is basically going to be little bit of drums, barely any vocals, and just guitars, right?
Wow.
And then my mix was going to be little bit of drums, little bit of guitar, and then all vocals. And our inner mixes were switched. So all like the entire set, I kept going over to our sound guy and going, I can't hear myself. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. And every time I'd say to turn myself up, and DJ was going to say turn himself up, his
It
guitars
was
would
the
get turned up even
opposite.
louder in my ears. And that's when I blew my voice out. It was that Jones Beach show. And it was brutal. And from that point on, that's when I
And there was no
realized, okay,
monitors, right?
there was no monitor, so it
Yeah.
was all in-ears. And I knew, okay, I got to figure this thing out because I can never have something like that happen again. So that's when I realized I had to work with a voice coach to build up my touring voice.
Yeah.
My singing voice was okay. It was
Yeah.
just
The
my
maintenance,
endurance, the
vocal
maintenance,
health.
the
Yeah.
touring voice was not there. And
And to keep
that's where
that
Melissa came in.
pack,
And
that
that's
wireless
right.
pack, just keep it on you the whole time.
Never leave your, yeah, never,
Never leave you.
or
You just
always
tape
check.
it to you. It's always here,
Always
man.
check that you got the right pack because that
Oh,
was brutal.
see, I always like a little bit of the monitor. I prefer that more. I've done some in-ear stuff, and I'm like, I feel like I don't know if you go deaf after a while or something because it is loud right in your eardrums.
It is. It is. I was never good with wedges, with the stage monitors because I always felt um, like what I like about the in-ears is that it isolates everything. So
It
you
does
you
really good for
just
drums.
feed in whatever you want. But when you don't have those in and you're just listening to wedges, then you've just got this massive stage volume going on. And even if I can get my vocal loud enough in the wedges, my body is still going to want to over sing
Mm.
to get up over the noise level. And so I as soon as I went to in-ears, it was a game changer for me, but it does take some getting used to, and it does require a really good sound
It,
mixing engineer to
it does,
get you
yeah.
an environment in your head where you get the isolation that you need, but also you're not isolated from the crowd. You got to be able to work some crowd microphones into your ear mix, because otherwise you're just going to think that you are sucking.
That's a good point.
Yeah, if you finish
Yeah.
a song and you can see the crowd clapping or cheering, but you can't hear them, you get really self-conscious.
You're like, oh. I tell you, you know what
Yeah.
it sounded like? It sounded like I was in the studio and it was
Yeah.
dry.
Well, and that just requires a little bit of finesse. It
Okay.
will be dry, but
'Cause we had to
but
do our
that's
own mixes.
right. And that's where then you have to take the time to add a little ambience, get yourself a little bit of delay, a little bit, just create the ambience in your mix, because otherwise you're right. It's going to be way too in your face, and that's going to sound awkward too.
Yeah. What do you guys use a talkback mic? Or use that?
Um, you mean so that we can have some communication on
Yeah, like
stage?
if you turn around, you're like, this is what's going on, guys, or something. Yeah.
No, we never really did that. I have heard of people doing that. I think that probably would have been very distracting, because
A little
we
bit,
were,
yeah.
we used, just like a lot of bands do, we had some elements on background tracks, some strings here and there, things like that. So you would also have a click being fed into you.
Yep. And it was all
And
timed and
yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on in your mix. And it does require to take some time to really shape that mix the way that you're going to feel comfortable, because you really, you don't want to be fighting your mix on in-ears for sure.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it can definitely throw you off wicked, even if anybody hasn't used them. I know when I used them, I still don't really know what I think of them. I pull the ear out just a little bit so I can hear
Sure.
the room and stuff, but I was always a monitor guy, but the problem is with the drums and the cymbals, they get the highs in your ears every night,
Yeah.
and I end up losing the highs, and I go, I want to be able to mix when I'm older,
Yeah, I
and
always admire those guys that are monitor guys, the guys that just stand up by their wedge and just blast it out. I always thought
or
that was
no
really
monitor.
cool. I don't know how you could do that. That would just be crazy.
Sometimes it's I've had one where the monitors went out because I'd never used in ears, and
Yeah.
I only had the fronts, and it's interesting, but
Yeah.
it depends on your setup. If you have all these amps on stage, then you can't hear yourself. But
Yeah.
if you went direct or your amps lower, and then you just have the drums, you just worry about that. But
Yeah.
you're in panic mode. That's really what
Yeah,
happens. And
you are. You are. Now we would have side fills, even with in-ear monitors. We had side fills, and those were really beneficial, because that gave you some air movement on stage. So your body was feeling the air movement. So
yeah,
even if you weren't necessarily hearing those clearly, you were getting that energy from them. And
yep,
that helped. So it wasn't just your in-ears. You were feeling the stage a bit, and that
yeah.
was a cool thing.
What type of microphones did you use live?
Whatever they gave me.
Whatever they gave you?
I never paid attention to
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah, I had companies that were always trying to get me to sing through a certain microphone. But to me, anything in that 58 world is going to be fine.
So
I
just like,
don't, whether it's a Sennheiser, whatever it is. Very seldom would I ever, um, care about that.
okay. That's interesting. I don't know if I ever even heard that before.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they all sound good. They all sound great.
Yeah.
It's really just
Yeah.
what can your sound mixer, what can your monitor mixer uh create for you? What can he
Yeah.
do with it? And as
That's
long as
true.
he can do something with it and make me sound the way I want to sound in my ears, I'm fine with it.
That's true. I know a lot of people like I'm endorsed by SE Electronics, and
Uh-huh.
this vocal mic here, the podcast one, I was just like, I've owned all, a lot of different mics and vocal mics and stuff, and I go, this is like, I don't know what it is they do to their mics, and it's cost effective and all that kind of stuff. And I use the Miles Kennedy one, the
Oh, sure. Yeah.
V7s, and I
Yeah.
go, I don't know, because I used to use the Beta, the Shure Beta
Yep.
58, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm never using that again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this one you're using sounds great. I mean, of course, your voice sounds great. I'm embarrassed to even talk, on the same conversation as you because
We
your
were in a
voice is so
session with
cool and mine
Melissa, and
is
you go, it's the radio guy, and I go,
it's
hello.
the radio guy. I know. And yeah, this mic that you're using is killer.
Yeah, what's that mic there? Is that a Shure too?
It's a Sure, but it looks like the SM7. It's the
Okay,
NV7. It's
okay.
literally this is just a USB
It's
mic.
not an electronic voice one then. Those,
No,
remember those old ones? I had one of the
no.
Chrome
This is
ones.
this particular mic. It was Shure's, stab at a podcast mic. So what they did is they modeled it after the SM7B.
Yep.
It's not as good as the SM7B, but it sounds decent. It has some of the same characteristics, and it's got an XLR output, but I'm just using the USB, and it's fine. It just makes it
Yeah.
easy, for
Yeah,
doing
that's what
this
I
kind
do
of
for
stuff.
for interviews and stuff. For people on the video version here, so I have it's from Queen, the microphone right here. This is a Shure Unidel 1
Oh
mic.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
from the
yeah,
70s and it's real chrome. Made in USA, folks. And
yeah,
it's got the switch right here, which is kind of cool.
yeah.
And it sounds different than the 58 or the Beta. But, it's
How
got
would
that
you describe the difference?
it's got that old school quality. There's a little bit of like saturation grit a little bit in
Yeah,
it. And
yeah.
it's not just because of the way I talk or sing, but the clarity obviously is not as there as new microphones, but
Sure.
the realness up front, beefiness, mid-rangey, I would say
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit,
yeah.
you know. But yeah, it's all about finding a microphone that fits for you. I just found this and I go, I'm going to collect this. So the camera here is actually on the box. So I had the box from the
Ah,
70s that it came in.
got it. Yeah,
But
that's cool though. That's a neat thing to have.
so I don't know with you, like the studio, it's like how do you choose mics for your studio that you'd want to use, or you think is this any good for, or do you have go-tos like this is my
I have
guitar mics
go-tos.
and
Yeah,
okay.
I have go-tos. At
What's the
this
guitar
stage of the game,
ones?
I don't like messing around anymore. For guitar, I'm going to use a Royer 122 and a SM57.
I've
It's
heard
going to be
that's
that.
really good. Really,
It's a
really good.
great
Yeah.
combination. The Royer was 121 was just the original version. The 122 is the vacuum tube ribbon mic.
Oh
So it's a
yeah,
ribbon
yep.
mic and a vacuum tube, and they're awesome.
The vacuum
So
tubes
that
are
that would
sweet.
be it, and I would have them both very close together, like literally just like this, and just mess around with
Centered.
the yeah, mess around with the access a little bit.
Okay.
Or the axis, and just move it until it sounds good to me, but the Royer is a big part of that. It's like a 57 sounds awesome by itself.
That picks up the
But then
highs,
it
the
does. It
mid-range
picks up
too.
the crisp kind of, stuff.
It doesn't have that
And you
low
can
like, you know.
it doesn't. Now you can simulate that. You can do some EQ and make a 57 sound pretty great by itself, which I've done before. But boy, when you bring in the Royer, is just your world opens up, and all of the sudden you can hear how you're going to mix this thing.
Yeah. Well, it makes it easier, right? Because it's like you already have the sound.
That's it. I
I
mean,
realized
people.
that for years. Like, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, people don't like guys that are recording these days that are doing everything with amp simulation. Amp simulation is awesome. Listen, I made Saints of Los Angeles with amp simulation. Um,
Wow.
believe it or not, yeah. Um, but what I was gonna say is, when it comes to mixing, you probably know this. I don't care how good your amp simulator sounds. Um, it's harder to mix. It's just harder to get those guitars to sit where they need to sit in
Yeah.
the mix. And when you are using a very good quality amp with really good microphones and a good signal chain, it just mixes itself. You have to
Hmm.
you spend so much less time on the guitars getting them to sound good.
Yes. Yeah, way less time. I used to revert it, right? I just put the mic on the amp and then, okay, I got some really good preamps and record it, and then I'll just screw it up with EQing and compression later.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So it's now what you said, it's more of like you got to pick the right microphone for the right cabinet, for the right guitar head, for the right guitarist a lot of times. But
Yeah.
if it sounds good from the get-go, if it sounds like basically what it does coming out of that amp,
Yeah.
that's what you want. And what it
Yeah.
is that air push.
That's right.
Digital doesn't have that,
It doesn't. It doesn't have that kind
and
of
you hear
woofy
it.
thing that you hear, you feel, and it just
You see it actually in the speakers. You can't see it right here, but you can see it when those speakers move. You
yeah.
can
Yeah.
see that error. It's the
You know,
low mid frequencies.
you were mentioning before we jumped on that you some of your cabinets that you have, they also it
Yeah.
sounds like you're mostly all 12-inch. Do you have a 410 back there?
No, I used to. I used to have a stack,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
sold that because it was huge.
Yeah.
So
The
yeah,
410 is kind of my that's my
the
world.
212 I have and a
Yeah,
112.
yeah. And I've recorded a lot of 212s, but I always kind of lean for it to a 410.
It's got the extra grit. It's got the extra
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah, it gives me what I want for sure.
Do you well, not all the speakers are created equal either
That's
on an
true.
amp.
That is true.
So you have to kind of find the right one. On a 2x12, you got two speakers, but so I have a Black Star, but it's like the British sort of emulation model thing.
Yeah.
And I've used that on everything, which I really love. And then I was at the store, so I got a Rev head because Daughtry uses Rev, and I
Oh
go, I
yeah.
really like that kind of clean, especially when you go out. It sounds like the amp plugged in, the direct
Yeah.
out with those.
Yeah.
And I go, okay. I tried a Rev cabinet, a Mesa Boogie,
Yeah.
and then a Carvin, an old Carvin,
Oh yeah.
which is
Yeah.
like real cheap, open back.
Yeah.
All three of them, I chose the Carvin because it had more of that like low end boom. It didn't have quite, the clarity highs. And I go, I can
Yeah.
get that with a pedal. I can get that with one of the
Right, right.
simulator things. But this sounds like an old school PV
Yeah.
in a way, a little bit. And then so I have a condenser microphone on that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I have a Cat Audio. They sent me one of their new vocal mics, and that adds a lot too. Because I
Yeah.
used to have a Shure ribbon microphone
Yeah.
on it, and then I have a Unidel 257 from the 80s. I don't use the
Oh,
new
nice.
ones anymore. And
Right.
then I actually used the Miles Kennedy vocal mic for my guitar cab, and that thing, oh, sounds awesome. So all
That's
three
cool.
together on the 2x12 and the 1x12 with an orange amp, Black Star head. Well, it's actually a pedal. That
Yeah.
pedal back there is actually, you can play as a pedal direct out and go into an amp. So it
Okay.
actually has a 100-watt thing in it, which is
Oh wow,
awesome.
nice. That's
Then
cool.
we talked about Tonex, right?
Yep.
So you never, I mean, so I own Fractal. I've tried them all. And that thing for like $400, I was like, that's pretty dang close to a
That's
Fractal.
cool. Yeah, yeah.
And I've tried it with amp simulator pedals. I've tried it with
Right.
different tube preamps, and I've tried almost everything past 10 years. And I'm like, well, here it is. You can be let's say a bedroom producer type, right? And use all the direct stuff. But I tell you, it's the combination between both that will open up
Yeah.
your world.
Yeah.
So it's because some guys are like, no, I just use amps. That's all I'm going to use. I'm not
Yeah.
going to use this other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, like we were talking, so when we're mixing, right? Sometimes there's a certain frequencies we miss and that's not
Yeah.
captured. Where
Yeah.
you're like, I want a cranking guitar solo, right?
Yeah.
And you need something that just has the highs beyond belief. That sounds like one of those old 2002 computer simulated guitars. I don't know if you
Right.
remember
Right.
those.
Oh yeah.
You throw one of those on top, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh wow, now it stands out. Like, is that the stuff that
Yeah.
I think about? I do this stuff every day.
All the time. All the time. You know, we're always searching for that thing that's just going to get us excited, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, it's it's all kind of self-indulgent because people don't care. People don't care if they hear a good song, they don't care how good the guitars sound, but we
Yeah.
do, and it's fun. And
Yes.
that, like, it goes back to what I was saying about how I'm just pulling up songs and mixing them just for myself. Spend an entire day mixing something just for myself. No one else is ever going to hear it, but it excites me. I get excited about it, and it's the same thing with gear. It's the same thing, with guitar tones and all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. There's no one way to do anything. And I think that the more ways you can find to do things and kind of explore and be adventurous, every once, a lot of times you come up with crap. A lot of times you just go,
Yeah.
you can spend hours kind of blending different things and go, you come back the next day, it's like, yeah, that's not what I thought it was. But
Yep.
then every once in a while, it's like, shit, I'm going to use this on everything for the rest of my life. You know?
Exactly. If it sounds like you said, you nailed it. If it sounds the same the next day
Yeah.
that you go back and you're
Yeah.
like, I got it.
Yeah,
This is it.
absolutely. And that happens. It
You
happens
know,
enough to keep us excited.
I caved in and I got a snake because I was like, I was running all individual wires everywhere.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, well, it's mostly for live stuff. And I go, wait, no, they use it for studios too, I think. So I tried it and I
Sure.
was like, whew, like this saves me a bunch of time. And it actually it sounded better somehow. I
Could,
don't,
yeah, I had a snake in one of my studios. It was like an old whirlwind or something. It wasn't even a high quality snake. It was just
yes, I
kind
have
of
a
okay.
Rockville
And
one.
yeah,
Yeah. Extra 25 feet.
we get so hung up on this gear and we get so precious about it. And then you can step back and again, like I said, you have to remind yourself, nobody cares. Nobody cares about this. Just me and my pals that I can, play them this tone and they'll be like, holy fuck, how'd you get that? But
That's
most people don't
true.
care. And it's
That's true.
okay.
But for
It's
me, I think it's a little different because it's like I want to have recordings that are maybe quote unquote, as good as if you went to like a Blackbird studio or you listen to that new Daughtry record or Molly Crew, whatever it is, and it's like, how come I'm not getting that sound? Not the
yeah,
sound of the
yeah,
guitarist, but the quality.
yeah, yeah.
So it
That's
takes a long time.
it does take a long time and it has less to do with the room. It has less to do with the studio. And it has to do more with your understanding of kind of, again, what I was talking about at the beginning of this, your understanding on what it takes to get you where you want to go. And and I think the other thing is to also be open to the idea that maybe where you think you want to go with this is not as good as something that you might stumble upon during the process of trying to get to that place.
That's true.
I think you always have to be open to the idea. Let's not get so narrow-minded, like, trying to chase this sound that I know exists and that I know there's got to be some way that I can achieve it. Let's not get so narrow-minded about that you miss the forest through the trees. So
You
I
mean
think
you
you
forget
always
about the song in a way too, or you focus on
no,
the sound,
I
or
mean that like just as an example, I'm so obsessed about getting this particular kick drum sound that I go through, 15 different mixes with 15 different kick drum sounds, and maybe two or three of them were actually better than what I had in my mind that I was hunting for, but
yeah,
I'm so singularly focused on getting that sound the way I want it to sound that I miss the fact that I just made it actually sound better than that.
I gotcha. Yeah, you stumble upon that sound that's like that's it, but no,
Yeah.
it's got to sound like this.
Right, right.
Yeah, I gotcha. That's interesting. Yeah, you can. Oh, it's almost like your own ego in a way,
Definitely.
and you're like
Definitely.
trying to search for
You're trying to
something.
prove something to yourself because you think if I can achieve this thing, if I can prove this to myself, then I can prove it to the world. And every mixing engineer out there is going to say, "Hey, did you hear that latest James Michael mix?" Now that's how, it's all ego. It's all ego.
Yep. Wise words from a wise man. Radio Wigwam, man. We could do a whole other show. We didn't even get into like really, really technical stuff, man. This is amazing.
Can talk for hours about this stuff, right?
So, before we go here, are you releasing? I heard, anyways, that you're releasing something. You're getting back into singing. little bit? You want to do something or?
There, yeah, I'm talking about I'm there are some things coming up.
Okay.
I haven't really done much singing at all in the last 5 years. So I am starting to build my voice back up because I have some things coming up that I would like to be in the right shape for.
Okay. Studio wise?
Studio wise, yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I can talk about right now, but there are some things coming up where I will have to have my voice in good shape again. Let's just leave it at
There you go.
that.
Interesting. Well, I hope you release another one of your the solo songs too.
I've got like 4 or 5 songs done. It's interesting. After I released California Smile, I really um I was I had kind of started doing the social media thing again a little bit just to
I
promote,
noticed
just to
that.
let people know that I had released it. And I was so unhappy doing the social media thing that it kind of ruined the experience for me. So I'm glad that I have that song out there. But I think like if I do release more solo music, I'm just going to do it without the social
Just
media
do it.
thing. I'm just going to put it out and just let it sit there, and maybe 50 people will hear it, maybe 100 people will hear it, or maybe somebody will share it and it will catch on or something. But
Yeah.
that's not my goal anymore.
Yeah.
I'm,
Well, maybe put up a post saying that it's out there, and then I know what you
that would
mean
be
though.
about the
Don't like
extent of it.
hammer it, hammer it. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be about the extent of it.
It
It
is.
to
It
me, I
takes out
just
the fun of it. It
it
does.
really does. It did for me. It really burnt me out. And I've been, for the most part, I've been off of social media now for several years, and it's just been so nice. It's been so great, you
Yeah.
know. But also, the one thing I do miss, I will still go on sometimes and just like other people's posts, like friends of mine, bands that are out
I
doing stuff,
noticed
just
that. Yeah.
just just to let them know that I still see you, I still think about you, I miss you, all that
Yep.
stuff. But
I think our last interview, you liked it. Like I think it was like months later, and I go, "Yeah, he's still around." I think you
yeah,
liked something on my TikTok, and I go, "Does he have a TikTok?"
I had a TikTok for about 5 minutes, and that
Oh,
that didn't last.
well, I appreciate you coming on the show here. We'll have you back sometime. We'll talk some more gear, and when you get those new recordings together, and we can talk about the new songs and stuff, we will do that because I know there's a
Hey,
lot of
dude,
people.
I'll send you the recordings. I'm not going to release them yet, but I'll send them. You can hear them. There's some good stuff.
All right, man. I'll definitely listen to them. I'll throw them up on the
Just
monitor
don't release
mix.
it. Just don't put it on
No,
your radio
no, I'll give him the
wigwam.
old monitor mix here on my
There you go.
speakers.
There you go.
So, all right, everybody out there, Radio Wigwam, Palangi Studio of Rock. Thanks for tuning in here. Rock singer here, James Michael from Sixx A.M. Make sure you check out some of his solo music and stream. And I say, download. Download the stuff. Download helps us as artists so much more than the streams
Hmm.
because you could be there streaming a song for a month and you could have just downloaded the song for $1 and we could have, gotten something out of it.
There you
You know what I
go.
mean? So thanks everybody out there. We're tuning in here. We're actually on every Tuesday night if you're just tuning in, and you can hear other interviews and playlist shows. Sometimes if you want to too, we do playlist shows where you give me 8 of your all-time rock songs and we just talk for like 8 minutes. And it's your show basically. So we might have to discover that with you because I'm interested in hearing your top 8 rock songs.
I'm into that. That's cool. That's cool.
All right, man.
Well,
Everyone
buddy,
out
thank
there,
you. Thank you for having me on, man. It's always good to talk to you.
no problem. Make sure you check out Melissa Harding too, the previous interview that we did. And James, he comes in the singer safe place every once in a while and gives his words of wisdom. And I think that's all. I'm going to tell you before I left, I was like, this dude is real because there's no singer out there that will spend like 2 hours with, people having, questions and vocal stuff. there's just nobody that does that. Like you
It's a
would,
fun conversation, though, isn't it?
it is. It's very
I have
unique.
so much fun. As you can tell, you and I are the same in the sense that we love to talk. We love to do this stuff, but we also love to talk about doing this stuff.
Yes.
I love the conversations, and what I love about Singer Safe Place is it's people with all different levels of interest in singing. And
Yes.
so you
Yeah.
have people that are doing it professionally, you have the people that are just doing it as a hobby. I think there's even a couple of people on there that don't sing at all, but are just interested in hearing the process. So it's a really cool conversation.
It is. So you guys can check that out with Melissa Harding. Go to her website. And of course, James is on Instagram and stuff. You can follow him there. He may not be as active, but you can still follow his stuff. Right?
That's right. That's
Yes,
right.
right.
Yeah, I am there. I'm just not I'm not very active.
He'll be back. See you guys.
Hey,
Thanks
thanks,
very
buddy.
much.